spoiler alert. All right, let's get right into it. All right, so Spider-Man: Brand New Day. Overall thoughts, amazing. It's a pretty dope movie. Um, I think personally, I would say overall, it is the best Tom Holland Spider-Man that we've seen so far. I got a couple of things I want to talk about in my notes. That I have here. I think the first, take all this with a grain of salt. Like I said, first off, it's an amazing Spider-Man movie. It's an amazing live action. I know it might not technically be MCU; it's a Sony version, but to me, as a Marvel comics person, it's probably one of the better representations of the experience that I feel like you got in your head when you read a Marvel comic, especially being from New York City and like having all these different superheroes and characters interact. So the first thing I'm going to say is a little bit of a nitpick, but the accent. I think the accent is pumped up a notch. They pumped up the New York accent a notch, which I'm glad that he sounds like a New Yorker, but it sounds like a few times, and this is me again being nitpicky as a New Yorker, when I hear people trying to do a New York accent and it sounds like they're trying, it blends over a little bit into a Boston accent. So this time Tom Holland Spidey sounds like he's from New York. But sometimes it was like a little too hard. He was trying to do it a little bit too much and sound like a dude from Boston. With that said, I think also the success that I feel that they're having with this representation of Spidey is because we got to see Spider-Man No Way Home. We got to see all three of the Spideys, and everybody loves for different reasons. And the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, I always felt he wasn't a great Parker, but he was really good at being Spider-Man. His body language, his tone with being sarcastic without necessarily being super hurtful. I think that they took those notes that they saw how people reacted from that movie and they blended all that in. So with that said, like Spider-Man is just a little bit more cocky and he's just funnier. He's just a little bit more funny and sarcastic and irritable New Yorker. Like his whole relationship with Frank, you could kind of see that coming out. I think one of the things too that I thought was great about having Frank in there was you get to see through context of the other superheroes who Spider-Man really is. You get to see how, and I feel like it's very similar to what they did with the new Superman movie, where you get to see how much of a Boy Scout Superman is because you see him in the context of the other superheroes. Where the other superheroes, yeah, they're heroes, but they're like a little bit more like, we don't care. We're going to take this monster down. Or like their line is a little bit different than what Superman's line is. And I feel like you see that with Spider-Man in the context with the Punishers. Like, all right, you see where his line is and where he draws the line. I think fighting ninjas was pretty cool, even though, again, one of my nitpicks is they nerfed Spider-Man in the live action films a lot, because in the comic books, they would always go out of their way to say, like, no one can touch Spider-Man. Like, because of his spider sense combined with his agility, like, you literally cannot lay a hand on him. There's no way. Which leads me to, like, the whole new, and I think they sort of, like, trying to retcon that with the Peter's evolution with the organic webs, and then a true spider sense finally. Like, Tom Holland gets a true spider sense like Toby had, where you, like, it's almost like things slow down to the point where, like, yeah, even ninjas shouldn't even be able to put a hand on. And on that point, it was weird watching in the theater and you see, like, damage controls working with the hand, that should have been a red flag. That to me was like obvious foreshadowing. Like, these people kind of shady. You don't just call the hand some innocent kids or whatever. Yeah, there was a few red flags with that. What else do I have on my notes? Oh, on the sort of I don't know side, um, introducing Jean Grey into the Spider-Man universe is a little. I don't know where they're gonna go with it, so I'm gonna reserve judgment. I'm not gonna say it's completely bonkers, but it's a little unorthodox. Having Parker create the tech that nullifies the mutant gene, that's a slippery slope, but maybe that's the point why they brought it in there. Maybe that's the thing that's going to really tie Parker into the new MCU. But to me, that's just like, Peter. That would be a real sticking point for Peter going forward. Like the amount of guilt he's going to feel once that tech becomes like a thing to oppress a whole race is kind of crazy. I love the Punisher Hulk Spider-Man fight. That was like right out of the comic books. I love the comedy in it. I love the fact that Frank, even though he knows he's totally outclassed, he still is gonna go try and help Spider-Man. And it's like that's another note of like the context between two heroes and how they look at morality. Like, and you kind of look at Frank like, even though he's extreme, here's a guy who's willing to lay it all on the line, even if he knows he's outclassed because he feels like he's got to help his friend. Even though there's points where in the movie where I'm like, how's the Punisher not getting rushed by police constantly? Like, he's the Punisher. How is he just walking around? But, that's here nor there. Yeah, I think overall, though, it was a great movie. Even though I said, like I said, I don't know if the gene and mutants being sort of like really being a thing and revealed in a Spider-Man movie, how that's going to work going forward, and if that's going to feel a little awkward story-wise as we get deeper into the X universe. I think it was a pretty cool approach, and I think some of the superhero movies overall are learning how to get over this plot point of always having to introduce a big bad as the central antagonist. Like, just like Thunderbolts, it doesn't always have to be a big bad. Sometimes the heroes face an enemy from within. Sometimes, a lot of times in the comic books, heroes, go against another hero until they figure out, oh, you're cool and I'm cool. And like, that's a significant comic book trope. So I'm not too mad at it. I think everything worked out well story-wise. It's great for the plot in the sense, like, when you think that is sort of the end of the story, there's more to it. And then it kind of leaves you in a place where it's kind of a cliffhanger, like where things going to go, but also you wrap up a lot of like emotional arcs, especially with Parker not having any friends and being lonely, which I see some people online, nitpicking with, but for me, growing up reading comics in the late 80s, in the 90s, that's the Parker I grew up with. That was a definitive trait of Parker. He wasn't this cool guy who had a lot of friends. He was pretty much a loner, and because of the guilt he carried from that initial passing up of stopping that criminal who killed Uncle Ben, he carried a lot of guilt with him, and he just felt like, focusing on being Spider-Man was the best thing, and not for financial gain or fame or anything like that. That was his thing. I would say, like, yeah, they hit the nail in the head with that, and I was always annoyed with this version of, golly gee, Mr. Stark, and oh, Mr. Stark, Mr. Stark. Like, I hated that character trait. Like, that wasn't the Peter Parker that I grew up reading and like I associated with. Like, Parker he was a genius in his own right. He was his own man. And to have everything Spider-Man is sort of like built around is built off of Stark tech and Stark being his role model and all that stuff was just kind of weird, and it just felt kind of nasty to me as a Spider-Man fan. But this whole reset is pretty dope. It's pretty dope, and I'm looking forward to what they got going on next with Spider-Man. But I can't wait to watch that joint again.